I have the honor of being with my good friend and partner and mentor, Mr. Robert Genito. And from the how many we've known each other since Ty Lopez's mansion party, where I'll let him spoil the jokes. He actually came up with another one recently when we went to Toronto about our names. But Mr. Genito is an OG in the crypto space. He is in with a bunch of developers. He is in with all of the people that know anything of use and substance in the crypto space and the Web3 space. He's working on these phenomenal companies that are very, very promising. I've seen a lot of the financial analysis. I've seen the way that these guys move in general, and I just wanted to give you guys an opportunity to get some wisdom out of this incredible human being, incredible entrepreneur. And thank you so much for joining me, Robert. I know you're a busy, busy boy these days.
Yeah, I'm doing big boy things now, but it's very much an honor to talk with you, Rob. I mean that very sincerely. You're one of my favorite people to talk to.
Dude.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that you. I guess it has to do more with emotions. I love that you're open to that. Emotions fascinate me. I love them, and it really is a big pleasure. You're one of my favorite people that I've met in a long time. So I'm happy to do this anytime. Happy to talk with you anytime.
So that's actually a good way for us to start off too, right?
Hey, even when I am super busy,
Yeah, right. And
happy to talk to you.
it's dude, fucking. So where our conversation started at Ty Lopez's mansion party, I think we were talking about like souls and we were talking about emotions, and you brought up this incredible statement about how everything really boils down to how we deal with fear. I think that was the and you've clearly done a lot of research and like attended events and talked to a lot of people about this stuff. Can you break that down? Like how does someone in your position that's a CEO of a company that's managing this crazy project and many projects before it deal with fear?
Well, it's been a long time that it took me to realize this, but you know how when you're, I don't know, when you're out in the sun a little too long and you're getting a little too hot, there's a sensation to it. You know, it's like the universe, the physics, the whatever of your body is saying, find someplace cool. You just kind of inherently like learn that, and then you figure out like, oh, it's a little too hot, right? Like, not everything is as obvious as touching a hot stove, and then we learn immediately. But then what I learned, it took many years, and I'm very convicted of it. Best way I can put it into words is that the feeling of when something you believe about the world around you and the universe around you, if you believe something around you that is not true, right, you'll have a feeling, and it's fear. Like I heard in the New Age world, I'm not a fan of. I mean, no offense to any New Age people watching this, not a fan of it. But one thing that I did hear from the New Age world that blew me away was, oh, fear is just false expectations appearing real. And I was like, whatever, New Age person. Whoa, wait a minute, that makes a lot of sense from what I learned about fear. So using this information or applying it has been extremely useful. Often when we feel fear or worry or anxiety, sometimes we don't want to man up or woman up and call it what it is, fear. Letting fear guide me to finding like, what is it I believe about my surroundings, the world, the universe, other people? What is it I believe that's not true? Has become an incredible way to get out of my own way in terms of success.
So in terms of the how do you actually, if you've believed something for so long, right? How do you allow yourself to step outside enough to actually reframe things? Like, what do you use certain techniques, or are you constantly looking for this type of inspiration? Like,
Yeah, and it's developing all the time. It started with me realizing how to. It started with me finding a way to use triggers. So by trigger, I mean getting triggered emotionally, feeling angry suddenly, or somebody bringing up a subject that I just did not want to talk about, or someone talking about something and I just felt very judgmental, like, oh God, this New Age crap. I'm gonna poo-poo on New Age stuff the whole time just for fun.
no worries.
Yeah, I don't have any negatives about it, but so it started with realizing that behind every trigger was something that I learned a lot like a caged tiger learning. Like you see in the circus, a lion or a tiger, etc. They listen to commands and it's a lot of it's brought by fear, or they're going to get whipped, etc. Now, I'm not an expert in that area, but what made sense to me was, oh, like these triggers, it's nearly like I don't have control over them. It's nearly like I'll undergo this emotional process that I didn't choose. I didn't sit there and go, ooh, this would be a great time to get that adrenaline rush. Awesome. I really didn't have that choice, or at least I didn't think I did. So I realized that triggers were actually a huge opportunity. Unexpectedly, triggers are a huge opportunity to learn something, right? To learn something about self, or how you were maybe programmed, or how you we all come up with conclusions to situations. So triggers, I realized, are a way to allow us to become aware of these conclusions that we jump to. And so when I realized that, one of the first things I did was use social media to scroll and find what triggered me. So instead of responding to it and being like, "You're so dumb, that's not true, yeah, you're an asshole," like instead of saying things like that, um, and sometimes there were things I'd be like, "No, I don't want to see that," and I would scroll real fast. So instead of reacting to them in the way of responding to them, I would use social media to find what topics were triggering me. That's where it started.
Through this, you basically, so you went through a very conscious effort tackling your fears by virtue of understanding what triggers them first. It kind of
Well,
desensitizing yourself, or
it didn't really
allowing yourself to dwell in it a second.
it didn't really start with fear stuff. It After a while, it became like me understanding that it had a lot to do with fear, and I didn't realize that before.
Where did it start?
Yeah. So I don't want this to seem like misspoke, but it definitely started with realizing that anytime I was triggered, that it was like a program. So it was an opportunity for me to either be triggered and be pissed off, or be triggered and be sad, or it was an opportunity to recognize, that event triggered something, that event specifically. Like, we'll see things that trigger one person do not trigger the other. We even have this culture today where people are making fun of people being triggered, where they say like triggered, right? But it turns out, and I'll say with full conviction, triggers are incredibly valuable to us when we're aware of them. Incredibly valuable to us. And it sounds almost like like you asked, hey, where did that start? There was an area that went to after that.
So, okay. Now, you've been part of some tremendous companies in your ascent to your prowess in the field of Web3 and crypto. I just wanted to get a lowdown on, young Robert, in college and high school. Like, what is it that got you interested in technology like this? Curious.
Technology like blockchain, or technology in general? I'll start with technology in general. I don't know when it started. Maybe I was 11. I think I was 10. 10 or 11, 12. I was 10 or 11. I was fascinated with the game Mortal Kombat, and and I wanted to make my own fatalities, damn it. And I wanted to make my own moves. And people did not have an answer for me of how to make your own fatalities, right? Adults, we go to them as children to find out answers. But here, the answer made no sense. Like, the answer was, little Robert, you don't make your own fatalities. Those are the fatalities that come with the game. These poor adults just trying to simplify something complicated to me, and they don't know at the same time. And maybe I talked with an adult who did know, but my thought was, I want to make some fatalities. I want to make my own fighting game. This would be awesome. I'm gonna make my own game. If somebody had to have made it. God did not make Mortal Kombat, okay? Maybe God did. Just kidding. But I just knew that it was made by human beings, and if it was made by human beings, of course I could do it too. So that's what really started. I went to the library. I found out that I needed to learn programming, computer programming. Great, let me learn computer programming. So I went to the library. It was like elementary school library, literally. I was in 5th grade. And I got a book on computer programming, and I was like, school is finally useful. Book on programming. And I read it, and after reading it, I was like, great, this didn't tell me shit about programming, right? Like, I was a little frustrated. I hated reading, and I read this whole book to figure out how to program. And the book was for kids in elementary school. The book was, programming is done by somebody using a computer and something called a compiler, like BASIC. So it didn't teach me anything about programming, but it did at least solidify that I needed a computer.
And then you worked with, you said Click something?
Click Booth.
And what was this company doing?
It was a advertising company. They were like either founded or co-founded. The main guy was John Lemp. They were like one of Google's main competitors for cost per action kind of campaigns.
So you're what part of the company were you particularly salaried for?
I think it was like a junior software developer. With the interview that I had there and the first things that I did, I could see that the reason why they hired me is, they needed help in the world of APIs or programming APIs or some way so that their inventory of ads that they had to sell could connect with other networks and supply that inventory and vice versa. It was something like that. So they had hired me along for that.
And so you had this position full time, but you were saying that you got into the Bitcoin space and you started to understand some of this Web3 stuff that was going on. It didn't have this name. It didn't, was it even called crypto at that point?
Yeah, cryptocurrency was a word that was put out many, many times. Myself, probably 3 or 4 dozen other people, we started the crypto industry. And what I mean by started the industry is, because it's not every day that you just wake up and you're like, I'm starting an industry. It doesn't really happen like that. I realized ultimately that that's what happened is when a new industry starts, it's because some person or leader and other leaders, they're making a business case showing that there is money to be made. And so this industry has started because other people who aren't making that money, who are very experienced with building businesses, they're very experienced with business, period. They see these people making money and they're like, well, dang, I can do way better than these people. Like, this is the amateur hour, right? And for me, crypto, the whole crypto industry, where there really was no industry, it felt like amateur hour for like 10 years, maybe. But for myself, a lot of people in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, like the early stages of it, a lot of people felt so strongly like this Bitcoin invention, these cryptocurrencies, has to become a thing. It is so useful for humanity that it has to become a thing. And clearly it scares a lot of people who want to snuff it out, much like the early internet days. And even the not so early internet days, like 10 years after, CERN's, I would call it CERN's official internet of 1991. From my understanding of people who created the internet industry before 1991, they say, it scared a lot of people and it almost did not happen. But a lot of people in the early internet world, even to the point of the guy who made the first browser, the World Wide Web, I think that was Tim Berners-Lee. Tim Berners, I think that was his middle name, last name Lee, some guy like that. These people felt like this ability to communicate with the internet is too valuable for society. This needs to be a thing. And I've heard from some very old people that the internet almost didn't happen. And so with crypto coming along, I realized there was like this parallel thing that happened where people in early crypto, or people who, when Bitcoin finally surfaced as the first like working version of Hashcash or whatever these are, we all felt like, dang, this has to happen. This has to become a reality. So as the industry then became an early industry, myself personally, I felt very strongly that this has to happen. And I was very passionate about it because it seemed impossible. It seemed too good to be true. And I only want to work on things that are too good to be true. Those are the projects that I want to work on. If it's too good to be true, I want to work on it. I want to be involved. And that's how it was really with creating fatalities and even programming. It was a lot of too good to be true stuff that I was seeing become true, like quite suddenly. And so me personally, I had worked like in the way of like finding business, finding fits in pretty much a majority of the sectors of the cryptocurrency world. In the beginning, it was with, mining, going to GPU mining. I never ran a pool or anything like that, so you could say I was not involved in that kind of business. But there was mining, and then there was co-location in a way. Other people wanted to mine. I had cheaper electricity. Co-location at first was I have all these motherboards open for people to send me their GPU cards. I had about a dozen clients, nothing crazy, but they were happy that they got SSH access or remote access to these machines and remote access to control the devices that their graphic cards were on. Didn't scale that too much. I don't know how much I could have scaled it at the time, but then it got into FPGA mining with field programmable arrays. Not that I know what that is. I just knew that those were the devices and I wanted them. And then ASIC mining, which were like processors that were made for the whole purpose of mining Bitcoin. Got into that, eventually had 4 processing centers filled with nothing but these machines.
And when you
And
say processing centers, do you mean like houses that you bought, apartments? Like what was the setup here?
no, the place that I lived at, that was like number 1, right? I would just milk it. The other was a commercial space next to a storage unit facility. They were like one and the same. Uh, their, I guess you would call it access to the power grid. They were owned by the airport, and they charged me per circuit. I had them. I said, "Hey, can I get more power in here? Can I please get more power in here? I don't want to trip things, right? They're getting tripped." And they're like, "All right, you're running all these machines." So they gave me access to another like circuit breaker, and then they upped my rent. I later found out that they had ridiculously inexpensive electricity, and they were very aware of how much they would need to charge me for me to draw like more electricity from another circuit. Where I was like, "Oh, cool! Uh, this is a great deal, right?" Another was a commercial unit in Florida, and another was a commercial unit in Moses Lake, Washington. No, that was more of an industrial zone.
So at this point in your life, I mean, how old was you that you had 4 different sites that you'd set up
Yeah,
in
yeah,
different
yeah.
states?
In my late 20s.
Okay, so this was like 28 to
This
30.
is like turning into 30. Yeah.
Yeah, 28 to 30. How much income were you making, Robert, to be able to afford the rent for 4 different places in different places? And obviously, you'll have to travel to these places. I assume you didn't have someone taking care of them for you. So I'm just curious, like, what was your gross revenue at like 30 years old that you were able to afford 4 different properties?
Well, I can't tell you at the age of 30 what that number was. What I can tell you is that when I got my hands on the first ASICs, my revenue jumped up to at least $20,000 monthly. I was really excited about that. Especially this was from Avalon ASICs. I was bumped to their first batch. I was originally on their 3rd batch. Avalon ASICs was a company that was like, "Hey, we have to make these ASICs as soon as possible before this other company does," because they believed in the future of Bitcoin, and they viewed it like, we have to get this as decentralized as possible. We have to sell these units. We can't have just one company or 2 companies making all the units. They saw that as a threat. But I had written to them Chinese writing. I used to be quite fluent in Mandarin Chinese. I still am today. It's just when the last time I've spoken Mandarin Chinese all day, every day for like months in a row was like 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, 12, 13, 14 years ago. And so I decided like to write them in Chinese, and they decided to give me batch 1. I loved how on Avalon ASIC's website back then, they said very clearly their terms of service were that they prioritized Bitcoin developers, and they prioritized Chinese. And they're like, "If you don't like that, too bad."
At the age of 19, you were coming into 5 figures. At the age of 19, you were thinking about 5 figures as something that's a norm in society.
I remember like a senior in high school thinking to myself, "Man, if I would have known what I knew today, I would have just dropped out of high school." I'll be very frank about that. Like,
I bet.
don't listen to this guy. But it was being shoved in my face like, "Oh, Bill Gates said when you get out of high school, you can't expect to make $45,000 your first year." And it was like literally like exactly what I made. Well, it may have been 48, but let's say on the low line 45. Yeah, I had this habit, not this habit, I had this time of growing up, learning, etc., and just constantly seeing where adults were just wrong. And so when crypto came around, I was sure as hell not going to listen to anything any adult said to me, because they had just been so wrong in the past many times.
But I guess the thing that I was trying to say is when
Oh yeah.
there's this common trend where when someone talented is put in a lower rung position in a company, they actually stifle their growth. And it's a situation where you have all these ideas and these expectations in life, and the best thing to do is to put yourself at the highest possible position so you can fail faster. And in terms of money, at a very young age, you were making more than the vast majority of Americans at that time could probably even dream of. And I think it's made a tremendous amount of impact on how you view wealth in general. So I was curious, like, how do you think about money at all these days? Or what is your philosophy of money in society, in Western society? Like, do you think people have it wrong?
Well, there's a lot of false beliefs people have on money. Anywhere that you're afraid of money, there's false beliefs. That thing I was saying earlier about there's something about the universe or something inherent about anything like that's like real, that's true. If you feel any fear, there's something there that you believe that's false. And so what I see about money is here's how I view money. That view has changed a lot, but today, for quite a while, maybe like 5 years, I've seen money as a great metric for measuring your desire or even just measuring how much emotional progress you're making. Like, for example, let's just say somebody I'm thinking about, for example, was born into money and they were born into money because their grandfather did something great. And with talking with them and getting to know them over years, I realized that they've been at the same level of money their whole life, right? Like they never doubled their wealth except for maybe a total of like 20 years, 30 years passing and the dollar inflating so much that it's like, cool, I doubled my wealth. When the dollar inflates and loses value, you might hold double the number of money that you had 30 years later or 20 years later or even 10 years later. But what I noticed about this person is that they didn't ever like significantly come to a time where they used to be richer and much richer. They had lost significant money at a time and then got back up to what they had. And you hear this from people. You hear from people who had hundreds of millions, like Marcus Rothkranz, right? He's like a well-known like raw vegan. He was a Hollywood director. He had millions and millions of dollars, multi-millionaire, probably into the hundreds of millions, and lost it all. It was like completely bankrupt. And then in like no time, a couple of years later or 1 year later, just focusing on things, built that all back up again. And likewise, people who make a tremendous amount of money, including like lottery winners, they tend to go back to the money they had beforehand. What I'm trying to say here is how I view money is whether you make a ton of money suddenly or you lose a ton of money suddenly, it seems that most people, they end up staying at their like wealth class area for the most part. Maybe they have changes. I don't see a lot of people changing. The changes that I do see with people who have like significantly less money, or people who are making significantly more and more money and hitting new like wealth classes, and staying there. It's a small perspective I have in this world, but I'm seeing it as being related to their emotional condition, being related to their attitude towards money and a lot of false beliefs they have about money, or false beliefs that they no longer have anymore, right, about money. And so how I view money today, I know anything you want in life, including money, really it's about how much you desire to have it, how much you want to have that. People have competing desires too much. Like they'll want money, but then they're also like afraid if they have money that their family is going to want to borrow money from them. They don't want to let their family borrow money or something. Or some people might really want to be a millionaire, right? But then they're like, oh, but that's just so selfish. There's so many, like, I would give that money away. I would give all that money away to people who I'm judging as not as great and fortunate as me. Oh, here you go. So, when you ask somebody, like I've asked a lot of people this with money, not get a little too ahead of myself, but I've realized that money is just an incredible way to learn a lot about somebody emotionally. It's a great way to learn about people's false beliefs or even people's beliefs, that might be true, might not. Maybe you don't know whether it's true or not, or maybe it's curious. It's a great way to learn a lot of information. And I think it's cool. I think it's really neat because the only other things that I see out in the world where you can learn a lot emotionally and develop a lot emotionally are just with like relationships, like friendships, family ships, significant others. It's like that, like money, are areas that, relationships with society are areas that can expose a lot of emotions in us, trigger a lot of emotions in us. So I view money as just like another instrument that if you let it, it can help you learn a lot and heal a lot emotionally.
So now let's talk about where you're at today. Right? So you have this tremendous background, you've made a lot, you've been a part of a lot of organizations, you've learned a lot emotionally. I assume the little that I know you that you focused on developing emotionally, so that you have the ability to understand these more zeros in life, but also to enjoy life in a lot of ways.
I would disagree that you can enjoy life anymore just because of money. Now there's like that saying like, oh, I'd rather be miserable and rich instead of miserable and poor. And I'll agree to that. I'll agree to that. But really, all that shows is that people really like money for addictive reasons. So if they're miserable, hey, at least I can fulfill my addictions easier and get what I want. Um, so
So what is your advice to people in terms of balancing, in terms of living a kind of a satisfying life? Like what have you found are some of the things that work for you consistently to maintain, yes, where you're at, or try to elevate where you're at?
advice on how somebody can be happier with life.
Yeah, more satisfied, like get some the things that they need out of it.
Well, the easiest way I can say it, and then maybe expand on that, is I'm convinced that we will never be satisfied until we know what love is from God's point of view. Um, we will never be satisfied until we are at one with God's understanding of what love is. AKA, we will never be satisfied and actually happy until we are at one with God. And I'm not religious, but I think that gives a lot of brings like interest to brings interest to the words of like you must become perfect, just like Heavenly Father is perfect. Like that's a religious thing, quoted from like Jesus of Nazareth, and I think it brings a lot of context to that. So as far as satisfaction, yeah, I don't believe any of us will ever be fully satisfied until we're at one with God in that regards of what love is. Not our truth, our version of what love is, but what love is from whoever created this intelligent design around us. And so therefore, um, these things that trigger us, or these ways that we aren't comfortable, or these ways that we aren't satisfied, I think they're incredible leads, and I've been following them as incredible leads to be more satisfied, more happy, in less physical pain and in less emotional pain.
You try to align with. It's interesting that you bring up something. I was talking to a good programmer friend of mine about intelligent intention. Right? That there seems to be some sort of instruction behind this beautiful universe that we have, and to try to align the best that we can as feeble human beings with this intelligent instruction.
Say feeble human beings.
Well, you know,
I wasn't sure if I heard you right.
yeah.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
well, you know, we don't live very long, and we have this we have a limited perspective. A lot. Assume the vast majority of us have a limited perception. But it's expandable. It's a beautiful thing. Is there anything in particular that you use as a way to connect with that?
Well, the first thing there's multiple things coming to me at once. Like is with Darwin, evolution, intelligent design, and another thing coming to me is how I used to believe that we don't live for a long time. Just like I used to believe when you get old, you get wrinkles and you start looking quite old. Like it's pretty established. Right? For one, a lot of this reminds me of like people, all the people in the world. We all do have this limited perspective, and we gain more perspective as time goes on. And one thing that really blew open my mind as far as perspective was actually reading Charles Darwin's Origin of Species, because in school, I was in like all of the AP classes on my like 2 years of high school, and school was like, yeah, evolution's proven, Darwin proved evolution, and yeah, people came from monkeys. So crazy, huh? And then when I read, right, that's the narrative, I guess. Maybe it's not anymore. Well, when you read Darwin's book, you realize that's all a bunch of bullshit. When you read Darwin's book, he is an evolutionary expert who is saying, look, he's not really saying it this way. He's saying, look, I have a lot of experience with evolution. I'm an evolutionary expert. And by my expertise in evolution, come to the conclusion that it is absolutely impossible that man evolved from something and had to have been created intentionally by something. So that became one of many examples where I realized if you tell someone's story instead of letting somebody discover someone else's story, like Darwin, right? If I want you to believe that Darwin proved human beings came from apes, I should educate you about Darwin, especially when you're younger and you're more open and more humble to hearing these things, and tell you, yeah, Darwin, he did all these things. Oh, you don't need to read his book because I basically told you about his book for you. So I've realized that, like, now I say adults because I just mean older people than us. I realize adults have done this many times with many people. They have given you someone else's narrative so that you will not be inspired by them. You won't compete with their narrative. And I'm convinced this is happened with like Jesus. It's Jesus of Nazareth. I'm convinced this has happened with Leonardo da Vinci, even Leonardo da Pisa. It's happened with many people, so that you just won't learn about them. You don't need to. School already taught you about what their book was about. You don't need to read it. If you do, you might find that they were proposing was very different. And the other thing on a short note was you were saying that we live very short, and I used to believe that. I'm, a belief is a very hard thing to change. You think, especially when you've been running with it for 20 years, 10 years, 3 years, 80 years. Belief is a really hard thing to change, and when people do change belief, I think there's quite a bit of value and interest there, right? Like, belief changed. We really can't judge why. We didn't experience everything that they had experienced, but we do know that beliefs seem to get harder and harder to change, especially the more they kind of validate themselves. But I used to believe that death was like the end, and that we lived a short life. But now it's quite clear to me, and I'm quite convicted that, well, we're afraid of death. It shows not all of us are. Probably a very minority aren't afraid of it. Maybe they're psychotic or whatever it is, but there's this fear of death, and very clearly there are things that we believe about it that are not true. That's why we feel this feeling of fear. Just like heat is, the feeling of heat is energy is coming towards us, however you want to say it, physical way. Feeling of cold is energy leaving our body, or feeling heat, you touched a hot stove. The feeling of fear, once again, is there is something that we do believe, there's something that is very much integrated in us that's not true about our situation. It's not true about what we're thinking about. It's not true about what we're experiencing. Yeah, I used to believe that life was short.
And now by virtue of us fearing this thing, there are misunderstandings inside of it. And so, are you uncertain? Are you very committed to believing life is not short?
Correct. I'm very much convicted that our physical body is merely an appendage, kind of like our eye, both of our eyes, two forms of like sensory input. Our skin, you could say, another sensory input. Our ears, another sensory input. Like our tongue, there's a lot of like belief that the tongue tastes things because there's a chemical change going on. But do more research and you'll find that the tongue is doing something that is a little more closer to hearing the substances. So we have these sensory apparatus, but magically, when all of those sensory apparatus are turned off, like we're sleeping, we still have them somehow, right? And so I'm at a point now where there's two people on Earth, and I explicitly say on Earth, that I first met in the dream world, and we coordinated how to meet one another. The first time that happened, that really like blew my mind, right? Like I got to be going crazy. Like there's no way that's true. And the second time, it became a really interesting talk with this person that contacted me. Like, hey, what's up? I just wanted to ask you some crypto questions. When really they wanted to ask me more things, right? But so when I sleep, when I'm awake, I remember just as much out this morning as I remember yesterday and the day before. Not a whole lot. I didn't really care to remember it. I'm just like, yeah, whatever. I got my little routine. I know my stuff. But sometimes I'll be like, oh, what happened? Remember some of it. The same is true with my dreams. With my dreams, I'm extremely aware. It took some time to get there. People would call it lucid dreaming. I would just say like, no, it's just, I like to communicate things like as best as I can. And these are just areas where I know how I want to communicate them, but I know a lot of people have a hard time listening to it. So I'll give you the hard to listen version. Is I just realized, the fact that I can communicate with people, and I realize that other people can communicate with others, and they're very unaware of it while they sleep. Like with a good friend, and even with my daughter, we've talked about dreams about each other. I'm like, yeah, no, I remember I did this and I did that. And she's like, yeah, right. Like she's like a little kid, so not sitting there going, how do you know what happened in that dream? She's just kind of like, yeah, cool. We were hanging out and stuff, and this is cool. So because of the fact that I've recognized that we still have sensory even while we're sleeping. It just shows me that the physical body is just an appendage, and one of the greatest ways people can manipulate you is threatening your life in some way, as if you don't have this unrestricted life.
What an incredible answer. Thank you so much for opening my mind, Robert. One of the reasons that I genuinely enjoy talking to you. I want to ask you about the project that you're working on currently, but the conversation that we're carrying out, I think, is, again, perhaps even deeper, and something that, again, thank you for opening my mind for that.
Thanks for listening.
The friends have also talked about dreams and
I've had people want to tell me about things like Bitcoin, Dash, Genius AI, most likely during the times of Genius AI, where next thing they knew is we weren't talking anything about that.
and at the end of the day, I think it goes to show those that are doing the incredible things here on this planet, incredible minds, incredible souls at
Yeah.
constantly experimenting and creative and approaching and probing kind of the edges of human conception. Yeah, there's a tremendous amount. Let's say that the most wealthy people in this world have some of the deepest philosophies on life, because they have to. It's the emotional thing that you were talking about, the development that's hard to get to different stages of wealth. Like you have to be able to open your mind to these. So, just in the last or so minutes here, you're working on an AI finance protocol that is developing rapidly, and among many tens of other things, as you build out lateral companies and things. You want to summarize it first and foremost. If you don't, we can do a different podcast about it.
And just like early internet, just like early Bitcoin or crypto, early smart contracts, it represents a get in early opportunity for the next 10 years.
By the way, I'll put all the links and stuff in the video below for if you guys are interested in this protocol and perhaps even somehow trying to get some of Robert's time. Okay, so I've heard a lot about this over the last couple months. This, to me, is the most succinct description of the why behind this. Why you've seen this incredible opportunity and you've hopped on it. Something that's too good to be true. Makes sense.
But the third question was about people.
Yeah, obviously. It boils down to that. I think the progress of it, the integration, the way that you feel when you're riding the wave. It comes down to people, I think.
Yep.
Would talk a little bit about that?
Still learning a lot about people and relationships. But what I do see is the Who Not How book. Pretty cool. It stresses stop looking for how you're going to do something and instead focus on going to do it. And I think a valuable piece to that is we all have our own unique passions. And while we all might have similar desires, different desires or competing desires, all still do have quite unique passions. We rarely find people who have the same exact passion as ourselves. Often find people who have similar passions or who have a complementary passion. Like some people absolutely love making software. People absolutely hate making software, but absolutely love like fixing it. People absolutely love learning about teeth and teaching about teeth, or some other people love looking out at all that nasty junk in people's mouth, or beautiful junk, depending on how you look at it. They don't love the whole process of learning it, or they don't love teaching it to others. So the most success I've had with growing businesses and myself scaling, and I'm relatively still very young with that, but the most success I've had is learning how to feel if somebody, their passion is compatible with what kind of work you're looking to get done, or what kind of mission objective you have that you're not doing because you're just not that into it. It's like an important part. Learning how to like feel or discern that somebody else will find that really interesting. Yeah, maybe you're wrong, maybe you're right, but the best people you can have, or the best people that you can work for, are when you're doing what you're very passionate about. You can't compete with passion. Like passion is super sexy in an attractive kind of sense. Not like, not in any sort of like relationship sense, of course, but passion is just very attractive. And somebody like I could tell somebody about Bitcoin or Genius AI and be like, yeah, it's going to separate state and economy, and it's a cool economy, right? Or I can say it in a very passionate way, and people respond to it. Like, you don't have to understand what somebody's talking about when they're passionate, but you see they're passionate and you're like, whoa, yeah, something's exciting here. I don't know what, but it feels less boring than it felt like 30 minutes ago. Uh, um, Passion is really important. It's incredibly important that people do what they're passionate about. And you have a lot of people who are stuck not knowing what they're passionate about. Hey, whatever it is I'm passionate about, getting a more clear picture of that every day, every week, every month, it's becoming a bit clearer. I think I know what I'm passionate about. 20 years later, 50 years later, 60 years later, I might say, I thought I knew what I was passionate about, but it's way clearer today. So people really need to find what they're passionate about. Too many people, like when I was in the music industry, too many people would hear like, "Oh no, you don't want to be in the music industry. There's too much competition and blah blah blah." Well, the reality is like, so what if there's competition? If you are more passionate about something, you're gonna do that more. You're gonna be more successful. You don't need to get paid. You're going to learn what you need to learn to make it happen. You're going to learn how to make a Mortal Kombat fatality. Damn it. Even if you can't make one, you'll know how to make one. Today, I can definitely make one. I don't think it's complicated at all. But nothing,
By the way.
yeah, nothing can stop you when you're passionate. So you got to find people who are passionate about what you're talking about. You're not going to be able to qualify them, really. I mean, you might be able to qualify they can work with certain software. You can't really qualify that they're more passionate about you than it. They're going to know more than you know about it. And they might be turned off if you don't seem to know anything about it. You just got to be like, listen to their passion, go, all right, cool, yeah.
Where do you fit? So you're the curator of these souls, right? Or of these, the orchestrator of these passions, essentially the CEO of a rapidly scaling company. So does connect back to, I suppose, a conversation we had a long time ago at the Eat Souls. That's
I remember you telling me that.
I want to thank you so much, Robert, for taking literally an hour and a half of your very busy day to spend to educate my audience, to hopefully, people the human side of beautiful stuff you're creating. Really, like, of all of my blessings on this journey, and I'm gonna definitely try to put as many people that I can find that are passionate into your circle, so that they can spend some time at least with you, if not help grow the things that are going on. Let's do this again sometime.
Oh, what? Like, trying to figure out what you're passionate about, don't necessarily mean you, mean anybody else. If you're super passionate about something, everyone's going to want to stop you. You'll have relationships with people who are going to blatantly lie about you just to stop you. You're going to have parents threatening to like disown you. Maybe they don't go that far. Maybe they do something else instead. But if you're like really passionate about something, for some reason, there's a lot of people that don't want you to do it. It might be something as simple as, you're really passionate about like business or something, like business, and you want to go to school of business. Magically, your mom and dad has a problem with that, and your girlfriend, they're like, what? No, like, you're much better at programming or whatever it is. But it's just a pattern that I've noticed, and that people who work very close with me have noticed from watching things go on in my life and sharing with me things going on in their life, and us sharing stuff is, we just realize the more passionate you are about something, there's gonna be a lot of people that support you, but then there's gonna be a ton of haters, and I don't know what it is. I think it's just it's when people see good things, sometimes they want to squash it out, or they just don't feel good. Like, I don't know, not everybody's the same, but if you're really passionate about something, you've got to be you're going to learn to become okay with either people supporting it, people not supporting it, because if you want you're doing to be validated by people, you're not passionate about it at all. Maybe you've lied to yourself or convinced yourself, but if people hating on you about it bothers you, or you want to appease them, not doing something you're passionate about.
Wiser words, my friends. You heard it here first. Robert Genito, thank you so much for your time, man. Have a good evening. I'm gonna stop the recording here, guys. Check out all of the ways to find this man and this incredible content.